I know, I was kidding.
Science and engineering. I only know one.
Doing disabilities. Or humanities. Has a little bit of
Disgrace.
That was here and we're like,
It's a shame.
it's all right, because you want to set out for that much.
I have been back. Like 3 weeks.
Wait. Nor.
Yes.
Oh, I should put it last night.
Wait, so it's online. So I can send it.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it has been a minute.
And then everyone else is just like.
I'm doing this today.
You write down the.
Sylvia's on her. Oh, Sylvia's right there.
You write
So
down-
yeah, can you get Sylvia the info?
No, I know it hasn't been 20
And then we'll start after that.
I'm trying it again.
Oh yes, when Holly comes back.
So basically people say things
Mhm.
and then depending on what they say, if it fits into the box, you write it down. And then you give a yes. Say no one had any productive conversation, you're just goofy groups. That's a need for improvement. But if we were very serious and stuff, it'd probably be a strength. Then they're like good conversations.
Connie is the master of meeting evaluation.
Connie is the master of meeting evaluations.
And I should have read
See, isn't it? See, even I called it.
If someone says like, we need to do this to help students.
A good quarter of my brain that holds.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible person to ask. I get the best evaluations.
Who's evaluating today?
Sorry, she's asking me how to do it, and I am notoriously bad at it. So I don't know.
So confused.
I know, right?
I don't know that when something interesting happens in the meeting, or you think it's good or whatever, fits the criteria.
She's like,
You'll
gonna
figure
join
it out. You figure it out.
And when they join out,
Basically,
mention the
someone
time.
says something, you go, oh, that could fit in that box. You write it down.
Everyone. Hello. I wish I had a mic, but I'm gonna get started. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners. The Curtin Student Guild pays our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander members of our community by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which the Bentley campus is located, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and on our Kalgoorlie campus, the Wongatha people of the Northeastern Goldfields. We acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of this university, city, and region. Sorry, no, I'm opening the meeting at 5:32. It was 5:32 back then. Members present, we have Dylan, Hadia, myself, Morgan, Ebony, Connie, Sylvia, Tom, and Morgan, Sada, and Mia. Online, we have Hassan and Bonnie. Hassan, Bonnie, and Aster. Thank you, Mia. And then our standing invites, we have Noor over there. Thank you. And then observers, we have Layla and Alvin. Okay, let's get started. Apologies and absence. We have facts. Okay, so I'll start with disclosures of any potential or perceived conflicts of interest. Would anyone have any conflicts of interest? No? We want to minutes of the previous meeting. So there's the motion that the representation board approves the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 14th of the 5th, 2026 as a true and accurate record of the proceedings. Can I get a mover? Sada, can I get a seconder? Ebony. All those for. Oh, anyone have any questions or comments about the minute meetings? No, all good. All those for. All those again. Okay, carried. Okay, we'll move on to the boards. Actually, just a second. Okay. Move on to public question time. If anyone has any questions they want to raise now. No. Okay, move on to reports. Start with Dylan. he had his report submitted.
Thank you. A few things to update on this gloomy, wet, horrible Thursday afternoon. We've seen some success with the Running on Energy campaign towards the end of last semester. We got 2,600 signatures on that petition, which did result in free parking during both exam periods each semester, which has saved students and staff up to $68 per semester in yellow parking fees. There's also been a little bit of movement on improving public transport access to campus. There are more buses now running between Canning Bridge and Curtin, which is really good, increasing the number of services there. The Guild Housing Report has gone really well. It was released on Tuesday morning, and it's got coverage in the West, ABC Perth, ABC Goldfields, ABC Southwest, and it was on the front page of the Kalgoorlie Miner today. We've spoken about this, and it's come to this body previously for noting and some feedback on it before it went out. A lot of work went into it. It was formed on the basis of the survey that we ran alongside Make Renting Fair WA late last year, and has, been informed by conversations that we've had with students and staff in Kalgoorlie expressing the conditions, and it's not really the poor conditions in Kalgoorlie accommodation, but more the lack of housing, which results in a lot of students being in very tricky situations. A big thank you to Morgan for a lot of hard work on the content of the report and putting all the Kalgoorlie stats and numbers together. And shout out to Ebony for her hard work on the campaign, going right back to last year, but also in driving the petition to start with, and then also the survey that we did last year, doing a bunch of barbecues and making sure. So a lot of the fact that we got so many students to provide their experiences to us in that survey is because of the hard work that you've done in there, and also on the relevant submission that we've put in. So the Guild was invited to targeted consultation on reforms to WA's Residential Tenancy Act, which essentially with the aim of incorporating student accommodation affiliated with universities under the RTA. That's been a big call of the Guild now for a long time. So those laws are now being drafted, and we've been consulted on those, and we'll continue to engage in that process and hopefully see some positive reform in that space. In terms of on-the-ground stuff here, I had a meeting with the VC today about the report. Curtin has acknowledged our concerns, and I think there's going to be a bit of movement on some of the areas to make things better and more improved moving forward. So looking forward to publicly announcing some more information on some commitments once I get them in black and white, and we can really hold the university to account to deliver them. There's some changes to regulations that's been put through by the federal government. Broadly, there's a few improvements there, and also some concerning things. There's improvements in the higher education standards regarding student input into university governance and decision making, which is good. It's a positive step. I think it'll be mainly, you'll see the positive effects of these in a lot of other universities. On the student side, there's a lot of requirements for staff consultation as well in there, which I think is really positive. In a lot of the areas, Curtin probably already passes, particularly on student representation, on academic board and all of these sorts of things, but we're going to work through that with the university to make sure we're compliant and that it strengthens student representation here on campus. A big part of that is also that there actually needs to be extensive consultation with students and staff if major changes to be proposed. If some of you have sort of been watching the news over the last few years, you'll have seen a number of universities go about sort of announcing sort of restructures with very minimal consultation, if any at all. These new governance standards effectively say that in order for university governing bodies to take that kind of action, there does actually need to be a lot of consultation, which is good. Now, ideally, they won't be doing that. This will make that harder to do and harder to justify. So I think we'll see the flow and impacts of that. Slightly more concerning, and something we're going to need to engage with the university on, is the universities by the start of next year are now required to adopt a definition of anti-Semitism and also definitions of Islamophobia and racism against Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, which can be difficult work to do. And we've seen some really troubling definitions adopted, particularly of anti-Semitism, in a lot of universities. That does conflate criticising Israel or Zionism as a sort of political ideology with hatred towards Jews. The Guild is obviously very firm in our opposition to racism and of all forms, including anti-Semitism. But we can't be having situations where we are stifling criticism of countries and the actions of those countries. We've seen some quite difficult questioning put forward that's really this week in the Royal Commission that has really called into question a lot of the work that the student movement has put into the pro-Palestine movement, particularly around encampments. This is concerning and something that we need to push back on. The university will be required to, under law, adopt a definition of anti-Semitism. So it's now on us as the Guild to advocate on that front and ensure that the standard that we've managed to uphold here at Curtin and Curtin has been receptive to so far is that criticising Israel or Zionism is an anti-Semitic, and that needs to be, our belief is that needs to be adopted in this definition that the university will need to adopt. That needs to happen before the rest of this year. It sounds like the university wants to take its time to do this, as much time as it needs. So that'll be a conversation that happens over the coming months, and I'll keep you updated on it. There are the new equity spaces are under construction, which is fantastic for our equity departments. As with most of these things, there have been delays, but they are under construction at the moment, and hopefully it will be ready within about a month, which is exciting. So we can move in and open those, which will be brilliant. I can talk a little bit about merger. Would be keen to move in camera so that it's not on the record, just so that we can have a sort of free-flowing discussion. But did you want to save that for now, or did you want to move, like we can do that later?
I think we can bring that up in general business.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Too easy. We can do that. Happy to take any questions.
Anyone have any questions? I just have a quick comment and then I'll just go to general. I just wanted to add, I also think it's really important that, like, as universities are adopting definitions, obviously by law, that they also adopt, especially anti-Palestinian definition of racism to protect the movement, specifically, obviously, like taking recommendations from APAN and places like that, just like as we've seen in UTS and UQ. I think it's also really important to push. Any questions from any members here?
Yeah, I agree with that comment. I just had a question for Dylan. Do you know if the Guild has any access to a preliminary definition of racism that the university might be considering? Or?
No, so we don't. So there is the current anti-racism statement that was published late last year, but I don't believe they've sort of started in any form of consultation at the moment. I think it's really the new regulations are sort of just put into place without any sort of announcement on Monday. So the university hadn't started drafting anything before then. So yeah, nothing at the moment, but we'll be keen to see and share that once we see something. Yeah.
Any more questions? Queries, comments? Nope. Move on to my report. I'll take it on notice. Does anyone have any questions or comments for me? Yeah.
For any of your meetings attended the merger campaign launch on the 21st of May. I just want to know what the launch entailed and included.
Yeah, so there was one at Murdoch and Curtin. So the one at Murdoch included me, well, it was mainly me, Morgan, and Norbert. We met with the guild over there, took a couple of photos, been around talking to some students, we put up a bunch of flyers, and we gave their guild a bunch of flyers. And then they had a sausage sizzle. Unfortunately, there wasn't a huge turnout there, but we were still able to talk to some stray students we found. At the Curtin one, I was able to go for it a little bit because I did have a commitment after, but I helped taking some photos. And with the setup, it was mainly run by Dylan, Morgan, and Tani. But it was, before I left, there was a huge number of students who were waiting, and students were already asking questions before the sausage sizzle even began. So it's mainly just about like educating students and things like that.
Does it include the Instagram page that's been up as well?
Yeah, so Nora and I have been doing stuff on that.
The last post was on the 21st of May, so I'd like to know what's going to happen.
Yeah, so Nora and I are still, based off just like developments and stuff like that, we're thinking of what the best course of action is and what direction we want to take that in.
Sorry.
I think that was just an accident on Tossin.
I'm very concerned because I've had orientations this week, and I've been talking to students about, like, I used the merger campaign as one of the campaigns that the guild is doing, right? And I had, I think, about 5 the other night come up and say to me that they thought it was an April Fool's joke.
Okay.
So I really think that if we're going to have a good social media campaign, we need to be active on it. And if we've only had like 2 posts, when the page launched on the 21st of May, we're not really doing enough.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take that on notice. Thank you. Does anyone have any more questions, comments? No. Move on to Vice President of Sustainability and Welfare.
Yes, hold on, my laptop has finally decided to load up. I'm happy to take my report as read. As hopefully all of you should know, my pots finally got painted yesterday. It was good fun. It was very hot. I'm surprised I wasn't sunburned by the end of it, to be honest, because as I sat on the floor, it did get a bit toasty. But yeah, other than that, happy to take it as read and answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions or comments for Morgan? No. We can move on to Faculty of Science and Engineering, had their reports and KPIs submitted. Bonnie, if you want to speak to that.
Thank you. I didn't know they were moved around.
Everybody?
Yeah, I'm usually second, but that's all chill. So we had 2 months like 2 months. We didn't do the last month. So the last report was submitted. Most of my updates are surrounding the EF-wide studio space discussion. So they're trying to revamp how the building 204 is used. It's very old. I've told some of you it has asbestos in the paint, which is a huge issue, and none of the teachers seem to really care about it. They don't do anything about it. They're just telling students not to go outside, not to study there, in that open space, which is a big, like, a big annoyance to students because they're paying full tuition. Sometimes people come like thousands of miles, like kilometers to get like cutting me in, like they can't even use the study spaces here. So that's really bad. But also I had a meeting with the Dean of Engineering, and he wants to reuse that space, trying to make it more open and accessible to first years, to try and get more socialization and students in that building. It's mostly legalized. So I had that meeting, and then there's also been, I did my ally training, which was very, I think it was really well done. I really liked it. I learned quite a lot, which Mia told me I would. And also I attended the Wisdom anniversary. It's been 1 year since the Wisdom room opened. And so the Wisdom room's recently come under new management under someone called Stella Carabin. And she is quite impressive. I do really like her. And she's got a lot planned for the space, which I think is really great. I told her she should get involved with clubs. And I've got quite a few ideas with how we can get in with the guild, running events there, or just overall helping promote the space. And I'm really glad that there's finally a space for a Woman Plus in STEM. It's actually not just Women in STEM, but she runs a lot of non-binary sessions or queer sessions, which I think is great. And I was so there probably is an update needed. I don't know if you're meant to update it now, but for the last one, it says Div Committee meeting. I was supposed to give an update because Mia and I went across the university looking at the accessibility toilets, and they were pretty horrendous. If you remember going, like there's so many that aren't up to, like what do you call it? Up to scratch. Yeah, up to current standards. And so she submitted a lot of reports. I think that was the main things that came out of that month. That was also just the end. So we have the bringer, but overall, that's the month 4 wrapped up. And then for the last month, I was in Kalgoorlie. No, not sorry. I was in South Korea for 2 weeks after the report. We were meant to have the last reps meeting, so didn't have a lot of meetings. But since then, we just had an orientation. And orientation this week has gone really well. And also, it was an 8-hour week the week before, so that was nice.
Thanks, Connie. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Connie? No. Move on to Faculty of Health Sciences.
I won't take my report as read because I accidentally submitted my draft for my July. Please ignore that, guys. No one got circulating. So for June, the most important things to note are I think it was an announcement of paid expanding the paid placements petition. It wasn't one that was run by us. It was run by APNA, Australian. Wait, no, it's here. Allied Health Professionals Australia. They presented it recently. So it hit 50,000 signatures, which is phenomenal all across Australia. They recently presented it. So I kind of like announced that to our members. We ran the pop-up vaccine clinic, which went absolutely incredibly well. Very happy that it went well. We got over 170 students vaccinated with minimal promotion, and thank you to everyone who helped on that as well. What else? Yeah, and then we have started to kind of like form together the lab coats campaign that we're working on. So like a hire system for lab coats. Last reps board, I was meant to speak on how we were kind of discussing what we were going to do, what we were going to focus on. And since then, we have started to narrow down on budgeting, where to put the lab coats pilot system, and recently, just today, we've started to form like a really, really strong like timeline as well. So hopefully we'll get that done within the next like 2 to 3 weeks, which I think is really, really exciting. I've already announced it to a couple of students at one of my orientations as well. And they seem very keen on getting lab coat hires for free. Obviously, hire system. For July, the meeting with Bonnie, who is our first mission rep, I'm not too sure if she's online, but that has actually progressed. So one of our units in the Faculty of Health Science, which every student has to do, is the Indigenous health practice in health. Unfortunately, myself and Bonnie have seen and received feedback that it isn't the best. We've reached out to the unit coordinator, who is newly appointed at the beginning of this year. She's already implemented some changes, so we're hopefully going to have a chat to her. And Bonnie also ended up talking to someone else who was also involved in the running of the program, and it seems like there have been changes already made without the guild, but we'd still like to kind of see what changes they are, make sure that student feedback is being put in. I think the main issue is just a lot of the tutors aren't actually Aboriginal Australian or First Nation or Indigenous, which if you're teaching something that you don't know much about, that raises many like concerns. But it seems like that has been noted already by the unit coordinator and the faculty. And things have been already in motion for that. So happy to see that being like kind of processed in a way. But yeah, we'll do more meetings. I'll do more joint meetings with Bonnie on that. National Union of Students, I'm not going to go too much into that. My report was very, very, very freaking long. It was lots of fun. I learned quite a lot about the strength of unionisms, unionism, a lot of the student unions around Australia, what they do, how they run, what ideas that we can implement here, especially to do with like health sciences. So that was very fun. So thank you very much, Guild, for sending me over. And also real filming for lift closures. There are 2 lifts that are closed around campus. I filmed with Mia and one of her friends, and we have that reel up and uploaded. So if you guys could also share that, you might have some students that have classes there that first years. It would be really good to like get that announcement out, because Curtin has not put out any like notice of that. That's enough from me. Thanks guys. Any questions? I'll take them.
Any questions for Sylvia? No.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
Just congratulations on the vaccination stuff. I think that's really impactful work.
Yep.
And excited to see it back again in a few weeks' time. It could be fantastic. We'll see some more people through there, which is good to help keep us safe. So yeah, also just encourage everyone to make sure that they've had their flu shots, because it is still free through the end of this month, isn't it? Yeah. So
Yeah.
do that. It keeps our whole community safe, especially people that are immunocompromised. And it is very safe to get a vaccine. So if you're out and you're hearing people talk negative about vaccines, shut it down, because it does save people's lives.
It is true. Yep. Vaccine clinic will be returning next week, Thursday, from 10 to 1. And the week after Thursday, 10 to 1, right next to Concept Cafe. Once again, it's free. You can get it anywhere, but if you want it from the comfort of your campus, there it is. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions.
Any more questions for Sylvia? No? Okay. Move on to Faculty of Business and Law.
Hi everyone. So I will be speaking to my report. The first report that you'll see in the agenda pack is my one from June. The second one is actually a compilation of June and July, if that's easy. So I'll just talk through a few of the big things that are happening at the moment. So I've been having additional hours to do the Guild's submission on the reforms to the Residential Tenancy Act that will be submitted to the local government industry, local government industry and regulation and safety group. So I'm quite excited about what's happening there. But before I get into that, I'll just go through some of the changes around these big chunks of work that I've been doing around the exam format changes in the law school. So I think I mentioned it last meeting in May, but what's happening broadly is that you've had in the past exams that are being completed whilst they've been invigilated by either Iris or Respondus on your laptop at home. And now what's happening is the law school is moving further towards having handwritten and in-person exams. So it's a bit like an ATAR exam, which is very different to the sort of industry standards and expectations that are on these students once they graduate. You know, lots of people that work in firms have never been asked to write a response to anything or to answer a legal question whilst doing it in handwriting. So we're in agreement with the Law Society and quite a few staff in the law school at the moment that we need to move away from the model that's being rolled out at the moment. So what's happened so far is I've worked with the Law Society on a survey, and they've had, I think, over 80 responses now, which is fantastic considering lots of the responses aren't coming from first year students, which is where the bulk of the students in the law school are. So having 80 responses from what is essentially quite a small law school in WA is very significant. So I just want to shout out to the CSLS. The work that they've been doing on that is really great. And they also hosted a Dean's Forum, and I was invited to attend that as well, where we had the Dean of Law, Robert, reps from the CSLS and myself, as well as quite a few students who came along to that one, and we got into the exam format issue in quite a lot of detail. And what's come of that is we've agreed that myself, the Law Society, and Robert, on behalf of the law school, will write a joint letter with our stance on these exam changes and come up with recommendations to the university about how they should be approaching assessments in the law school, but also more broadly as well, because once, unfortunately, the law school does something, it generally pops up in other parts of the university as well. And I know that they've taken a proactive approach with Assessment 2030. So I'll be working with the law school in that, on that as well. And I'll also be reaching out to the Legal Practice Board to learn more about what they need in terms of assured learning, so that we can really approach this with an informed position. Last meeting, I also spoke a little bit about the safety concerns at the Murray Street campus. So we had 2 students get quite hurt, and they were assaulted when they were leaving the Murray Street campus from class. I've had conversations with FBL staff once I first found out about this, and the idea that they'd kind of, I guess, the way that they approached me informing them about this was that it was kind of on the students, and it was sort of on their responsibility, because and was kind of the students' fault that no one from the law school or from the university had reached out to them to offer support, because the students apparently hadn't reported any of these incidents occurring. When I got through to one of the students who'd been involved in one of the incidents, she told me that she actually had reported it and no follow-up had happened. So in later conversations, I've brought this up with people, and it's kind of, I've been getting very diplomatic responses, unfortunately, but I will just raise that apparently in either University Council or another health and safety committee that is going to be had at the university, there is going to be someone reflect on this particular incident as though it's a success story. And what I would ask any representatives who hear about it in that manner, we really need to express that if something like this happens, it is not on the responsibility of the guild or of student representatives to raise it with the faculty first. What should happen is, as soon as one of these incidents are reported, they should be addressed and seen to. So if any of you guys in these other meetings hear about something like that, please, I guess, correct the narrative if you can. The third section is the RTA submission. So I've submitted the first lot of questions, which included recommendations on definitions, the thresholds of lots of the legislation, whether there should be exemptions to the legislation, student accommodation, and also the Disability Royal Commission recommendations as well. So I've submitted the questions or our responses to the questions from these topics. If there are further comments or things that other representatives would like added to that, we can still get in contact with the people doing this review to sort of give them further ideas and thoughts. But the next topics that will be focused on include form of occupancy agreements, content of occupancy principal agreements, content of modified tenancy rules and agreements, minimum standards, house rules, property condition reports and security bonds, termination of agreements and urgent eviction, and also dispute resolution. So these are sections that we still are yet to submit our responses on. We'll be submitting them mid-August. So if anyone has any comments or recommendations on what you'd like to see in those in that submission from the Guild, please let me know. So far, the responses to the questions are linked very closely to the housing report that Dylan spoke to before. And I recommend everyone going and having a good read of the housing report and get a good understanding of what's happening in housing. Because throughout a lot of the orientation events, and I don't doubt that during O Day as well, people will be asking about student accommodation. So it'd be good to just be well versed in the current situation. And in the submission, we're also arguing that the RTA should have more protections for students in student accommodation, but also boarders and lodgers, which is more broadly and includes people who are, might have less formal arrangements with family members and that sort of thing. But it's really about reinforcing that everyone should have rights, no matter what sort of tenancy arrangement they're in. So yeah, I've also got in my report as well the submission from the Property Council of Australia that basically goes against a lot of what we've asked for. So have a look at that as well if you have some time. But other than that, that's what's happening in FBL at the moment, and happy to take any questions.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
Not really a question, but the housing report is actually getting around. Like, obviously, Dylan has been promoting it, and it's been on all the news channels. But also staff know. In my orientation event, staff have come up to me and been like, "It's an incredible report. It is really impressive."
Yeah,
It's good.
I know I'll be once we get the proper printed versions that I know we're looking at doing, I'm going to be giving them out to the people in FBL who sort of expressed interest in it. So if anyone else hears about particular staff who are interested in it, then it might be good to do something similar as well.
Anyone else? Yep, I'll move on to Faculty of Humanities.
Yep, I'll take mine mostly as read. The main update is that I had my meeting with Jeff Brooks, the head of the School of Education, last week. Basically gave me the heads up that this semester, the placement crisis is going to be much worse than last semester. We're going to expect a lot more complaints from students, much like kind of this time last year. A lack of communication from the School of Education, a lack of placements being delayed, etc., etc. We've dealt with it before. I think I'd like to, very much prepare this time, especially with O-Day, very much try and communicate with students, keep an open channel with the Education Student Society, and try and really hammer this on. Also get some material for our push with the Department of Education to establish that central placement system. I'm not sure if I had discussed it in our last Rex board meeting, but the education ministers do not seem awfully keen on establishing a central system for placements. They very much pushed back. In my chat with Jeff, it seems like that's been a big push of the university for a long time, and the Department of Education, through its many ministers, has never really caught on. So yeah, but that's about it. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Tom. Move on to Student Assist, who isn't here, but submit the report. Move on to International Students Committee President, Tawson.
Thanks, Adia. Are you guys hearing me?
Yeah.
Yep, all good. Overall, everything is going pretty much smooth for me. The usual meetings and everything. So at the moment, I'm mainly focused on the O-Day planning, like looking what I can do from my perspective, probably coordinating with the students. And I'm currently trying to reach out to some of the people that I know will be interested for volunteering with me in the IC stall. And also another update is like over the last few days, I also have been working with Morgan on the accommodation booklet for orientation week. I also spoke regarding that with some of the senior students I know and have just to gather different perspectives and people with relevant experiences. So the booklet feels practical, useful, and I try to keep it in a very conversational way for new international students, especially. Hopefully, the copies will be handed over in the Guild Day. And also, I was exploring some of the different ideas for this semester Cafe Connect. Last time we had games and sort of stuff, but this time probably after having the data from Cafe Connect, I am thinking about inviting a few cultural clubs probably to briefly introduce yourself so that the students can learn like more about different communities in Curtin and ways to get involved. And also there will be food, obviously. And just a couple of updates is like last week, I also attended the engineering pre-orientation session for international students with Connie. I think it was a great opportunity for me to meet and speak with a lot of new international students before the actual week. So yeah. And another update is I'm currently working with Bonnie, the First Nation officer, for a cultural awareness session for international students, probably later in the semester. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Thank you, Tassin. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Tassin? No, all good. Moving on to Postgraduate Students Committee President.
Hello again. Not a whole lot. There was a health science, there was a children. There was a health sciences HDR hub draft thing that came across the PSC desk earlier in the year. And it involved removing children and children in general not being allowed in there. I've finally had success in a back and forth with the Dean of Research in Health Sciences, good old Gooch. And for reference, that's his last name. And so that's finally fixed, and children are now allowed back in the hub. What? I have an event coming up in 2 weeks, getting the HDR students together. They get to meet me, ask some questions. There's a panel going on with most of the deans of research. Gooch is unavailable. And then they also get to talk to people from the library, and then student assistants running a session later in the day. As far as I'm aware, that has allocation exhausted for RSVPs. So we've got 55 people signed up. So that's good. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Morgan? No. Yeah. Move on to Career Officer Aster. Do you want to speak to your report and keep going?
I'm gonna take my report as mostly read. Only thing I'm gonna add, only thing I'm gonna add on a bit more is I had a meeting with a few of the other core officers from different unis with the NUS. So they just kind of talked about a campaign that they're about to launch on the app-based violence, specifically on dating apps campaign, and would want the queer officers support and whatnot, and also that they are pushing for DivCon to be run every year instead of every 2 years now. So there's that. Also, on my trip to London, Tani approved of me to buy books from Gaze the Word. So I will be coming back with a lot of books when I do come back in the office at some point, or when the new room's done, because I don't know if we actually have enough space to put in that many books right now. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Aster. Does anyone have any questions for Aster? Nope. Move on to Women's Officer.
I'm happy to take my report as mostly read. I think the only thing that I would add that's happened in July would be, I guess, further communication with the events team and Tani as to my event to be held on the 5th of August. Don't know if it's still happening on the 5th of August, but the Women's Fair. So we've decided to collaborate with Women in Business. And I think they'll most likely be handling the vendors. I've already reached out to a bunch of vendors, so I'll just pass that on to them, just because their collaboration was kind of a last minute thing. And then obviously Guild will be handling all the other aspects like stage and whatnot. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Sara. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Yeah.
Finally, the Faculty of Health Science is doing a major event on the 5th of August in the common free time, right in the Guild courtyard.
Yeah,
So just letting you know.
that's a bit. Yeah, thanks for telling me, because we for some reason, like I think we planned this like at the start of the year, and they slotted me in at the Common Free Time on the 5th of August. So yeah, and there was like nothing there. So I'll ask Tanya about it. Thank you, Tanya.
Anything else? No, move on to accessibility officer.
Yep. Hi everyone. Happy Disability Pride Month to all that celebrate. Yep, that's where it's at. There's been quite a few things happening in the disability space. Obviously the NDIS and a whole bunch of stuff. I did write some stuff down that I wanted to read out to make sure I didn't miss anything. So I'm gonna do that now, if everyone's cool with that. Yeah. I just also want to provide a warning that I'm going to be discussing topics that include neglect, abuse, violence, and death. If that's not something you can deal with at the moment, this is your opportunity to step out. So many disabled people, including myself, struggle to celebrate Disability Pride Month. This year, Disability Pride Month has been especially hard. In the last couple of months, multiple countries, including the US, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, have proposed legislation that would reduce the rights of disabled people. The US Department of Justice released a memo that said that states do not have to provide disability services in the community. This directly goes against the Olmsted decision and supports a new case going through their courts, which is Texas versus Kennedy. And that case aims to remove disabled people from the community. But now I'm going to talk about what's happening in Australia. So based on, most of these statistics are from the Royal Commission that was done into disability. 47% of people with disabilities who are of working age are not in the workforce. This is often because workplaces will not provide accommodations. Australia has the Disability Discrimination Act of 1992, which prevents discrimination due to disability. However, the legislation is incredibly weak. The legislation, under legislation, you can put in a complaint to the human rights body, and the disability has by far the most amount of complaints. The legislation requires companies to provide reasonable accommodations as long as it does not cause significant burden for the company. Reasonable and significant are not defined, and many businesses treat any accommodation as too expensive. Accommodations are not optional. They ensure the safety of a person with a disability. For example, we have a bunch of ramps around campus that are too steep. And so when that happens, somebody in a wheelchair, it is a genuine safety concern, because what happens is that they tip over. So they'll be going up and then they'll tip over backwards, and they'll often hit their back and their head on the concrete. That is a legitimate safety issue. This means that companies tell disabled people that their safety costs too much and they are a burden. Additionally, companies are illegally able to pay disabled people below minimum wage currently. Prior to the NDIS, many disabled people lived in state institutions. These institutions were rampant with abuse and neglect. In institutions, disabled people were isolated from the community. This means it was easy for this abuse to continue. Institutionalization still exists today on a lesser scale. People with disabilities live in group homes, aged care homes, hospitals, and prisons. More than half of people with disabilities have experienced physical or sexual violence. Disabled women are still allowed to be involuntarily sterilized, and that still occurs today. Every year, there are approximately 79,000 unnecessary hospitalizations due to neglect and abuse of disabled people. And every year, 550 people die from potentially preventable deaths. This is what is currently happening with the existence of the NDIS. The proposed legislation has moved back to institutionalization and will cause more abuse and neglect of disabled people. But you just have to take my word for it. As you know, there were 4,500 submissions to the Senate inquiry into this legislation. The Australian Human Rights Commission warned that the legislation risks violating the human rights of disabled people and will reduce Australia's compliance with the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The state and territory disability ministers also included a submission which said that they cannot fulfill the gap that will be created as a result of the legislation, and that they were not consulted in the creation of the legislation. The government's own NDIS Reform Advisory Committee wrote a submission to the inquiry which states that this bill should not be passed, which is insane because they were appointed by the government. The government has agreed to some amendments of the bill, but they do not remove any sections of the bill. Instead, they simply clarify sections. This will not prevent harm and will still leaves enormous loopholes that they are unwilling to close. As part of the
public hearings, Hannah Deviney, who's a disability advocate, said that when disabled people die as a direct result of this bill, and they will, their blood will be on your hands. Despite this, the government-run inquiry still supports the passage of this bill, which is an absolute slap in the face. We know people will die as a result of this bill because we have seen it before, and it is still happening. No budget is worth someone's life. Disabled people are constantly told that it would be better and easier if they were dead, and this legislation supports that. Disabled people should be able to live their lives and have control over their lives. We will not be going back institutions. There have been protests that have been announced on the 1st of August in Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane. Nothing has been announced in Perth yet, but I strongly suspect that that will also be announced soon. We cannot allow more people to die, and we will fight for our lives. So I hope you will consider joining us.
Thank you, Mia.
Any questions? Yeah,
When the protests are announced, can you share them with us, please?
yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Can we have an email or something to sort of tell us all the different ways that we can get involved with the campaign?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a lot of it's on social media at the moment.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of getting updates. There's Protect the NDIS, which is a grassroots organization. So they're the ones that are announcing the protests, and then they have given people the opportunity to then also join in other things. So how it started last time was that they announced those 3 locations, and then more people like Senator Still John and then Wydan, they were the ones that then did the Perth one, and then different people did like Canberra, and depending on like where your location is. Other than that, the inquiry finishes on the 14th of August. So that's when we'll find out basically what's happening with that, and then it gets voted on. The other thing is that the government's made it pretty clear that they have agreed to some amendments, but they very much want this bill passed. The Greens were the ones who secured the amendments, and the Greens have made it very, very, very clear that they will not support this bill, no matter what. That is also the position of basically every disabled person, and also all the submissions. As a result, the people who have control over whether this bill passes or not is the Liberals. So I potentially want to see if we can potentially do something to try and do that, because yeah, I'm gonna try and contact Liberal ministers. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments? No. Thank you, Mia. Higher education development's not, ethnic social officer, KPI is not submitted. We want to First Nations officer, which were submitted. However, Bonnie is actually an apology. So I'll move on to the motion that the representation board notes the reports. Can I get a mover? Thank you, Connie, a seconder. Thank you, Mia. Anyone have any questions or comments about the motion? No. All those for? All those against? I think that's carried. And second motion, actually, that the representation board notes the KPIs. Can I also get a mover for that? Oh, thanks, Morgan. And the seconder. Thanks, Ebony. Any questions or comments? No. All those for? All those against? I think that is carried. Next, we move on to 9 items for discussion and resolution. 9.1 is support the National Day of Protest against Pauline Hanson. Motion that the representation board supports the National Day of Action against Pauline Hanson, moved by me. And can I get a seconder? Thank you, Sada. Would you like to speak to the motion? Oh, no, all good. Yeah. Anyone here want to questions or comments about the motion? No? Yeah, I'll go to Albie.
Me? Yeah. This was something that was flagged at the National Union of Students Education Conference. Socialist Alternative came to the conference trying to make a proposal that we have a nationwide day of protest action against Pauline Hanson. There's been protest actions in individual states, but to my knowledge, there has not yet been a nationwide kind of simultaneous action. Anything related to Pauline Hanson gets the news because Channel 7, Channel 9, they just lap up every shift in the polls, up or down. And we want to challenge that narrative and say, well, it's not just an unchallenged rise to the top, but we want to have a day where we're indicating students in Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, Perth, etc., hate this person. We hate her bigotry, her Islamophobia, her racism, all the crap. and we want to stand against it. And so, understandably, everyone here has their own like priorities and areas of work, and we've just sort of considered that in the report. So, yeah, I know everyone's got the focus that that they have, but I think it would be good if the Curtin Guild could sort of get on board a bit with the protests. You know, like obviously on our side, like as sort of day-to-day grassroots activists, Leila and I will be regularly just leafleting and trying to have conversations with students about this. But if the Guild could concretely support those efforts by sharing on social media, or printing out some posters, putting aside a couple $100, like small stuff, the stuff that makes a difference, it's something that we would really ask of you, and that we think would be good for the Guild, because this is very much a student issue. As we know, the rise of the far right and Pauline Hanson is going to have an impact on students, and a lot of students themselves, really do not like to see this trend. So we want to give it a good push, but we want the Guild to join us with that effort as well.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments regarding the motion? No, we'll take it to a vote. All those in favor? All those against? Take that as carried. Move on to item 10, general business. Does anyone have anything they want to bring up in general business? Merger stuff?
Yeah, right.
Should I stop doing? Or do we want to move?
Yeah, I'd like to move in camera. I'm happy for everyone who's in the room to stay in the room.
Yeah, can I get a seconder for that? Ebony and all those in favor? All those against? Nope. Take that as carried. Move in camera. Stop recording. Thank you, Nor.